APC going to be learning from the mistakes of the PDP? And if the APC and the PDP were to be compared to each other, what would be the difference, or what would be the similarities, or what would be those things that the president would want the APC to learn from the PDP?
Well, because of time, let me quickly address the point on this issue of Uni and Bello, this issue of APC leadership. I want to criticize over a national convention of a party. That party will be sitting on the gunpowder. One, Bunin is the known chairman of the party to INEC. This issue of transmission of power from Bunin to Bello, deputy chairman, secretary, all other positions fixed has been laid inside the party possible.
But I mean, I'm not sure if this APC problem is going to go anytime soon, but let's keep our fingers crossed and see what happens before convention date. I want to say thank you to Ifedayo Iyaniwura. He's the Ekiti State IPAC chairman, and Opunabo Inkotara is a former special advisor on media and publicity to Governor Nyesom Wike. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Unfortunately, time is not on our side.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Nice to have you.
All right. Well, thank you all for staying with us. We'll take a short break now, and when we return, the conversation continues as we discuss the accusations that the president and his government is filled with double standards, especially when it comes to prosecution. We'll be right back.
The president 70% in the fight against corruption. You see, fighting corruption is not a tea party. It's a difficult task for anybody in any country of the world, no matter how powerful, no matter how developed the countries are. Corruption can be very tricky when it comes to avoiding the long arm of the law. And you also know that corruption crimes are not committed in the open. And that means that a lot of efforts will have to be put in place to trace the evidence of corruption.
I must tell you that originally, and for some time, I've always believed in competency as opposed to zoning. In other words, let's look for somebody who is able to deliver the goods. But in recent times, as a result of so many acts of injustice in the land and a lot of agitation in the land, I'm beginning to think, seriously speaking, that might appear to be one of the ways to address the tension in the country presently. Let me confess to you that while I was the National Legal Advisor of the party and a member of the National Working Committee and the Executive Council of that party, the president had always resisted invitation to be domineering in terms of party affairs as much as possible. But as things progresses, you discover that gradually people, in my view, are gradually bringing all pressure on him to take charge of the party. In other words, submitting the entire party to the president. And I think that led to what happened eventually in dismantling the earlier structure.
The reason why we seem to have insecurity all around the country and the reason why they are escalating is because certain persons in government and out of government are benefiting immensely. These people are the people we call conflict entrepreneurs. They make a lot of cash, a lot of capital out of conflict. So these are the individuals that are actually stoking up the violence in the Southeast particularly. And what we said is that it is the duty of the political elites from the Southeast region, because there are quite a number of people in government from that region of the country. They have security.
That the decision that was taken on account of vengeance, in pursuance of vendetta, by a regime that felt slighted, by what was rightfully perceived by a large section of the population as a genocidal and irresponsible tweet by the president was deleted. That accounted for the so-called ban that the government imposed. So eventually, the government had to reverse the abnormality that they had forced on the country. Those who participated in the atrocities that are being committed against Nigerians, the draconian measures, the high-handedness, the party that is complicit, the political party and the political actors who are complicit in these things that have happened, who have endorsed these things, who have been silent on the impunity of this regime, must be punished in the next election. Nigerians must, and that's the point I made on Twitter. I said, look, as citizens, we must imbibe the culture of punishing politicians and political parties that inflict pains on us. The reason why people go into offices and do whatever they like is because of the absence of the policy of consequence. They know nothing will happen. They know they will still be voted for. They will know they will still have people rally for them. But when they do these things that they know that they will pay a heavy price, people become circumspect. People begin to think before they act.
Weapons into the country through the northwest, which they used to terrorize Nigerians. The group's national coordinator, Emmanuel Omobiko, said it was hypocritical of the government of President Muhammadu Buhari to continue prosecuting the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, while leaving the notorious bandit kingpin, Bello Turji, to continue terrorizing residents of the northwest zone. Now, the HU gentlemen for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Marianne.
All right, so I'm going to start with you, Raymond, before we go to Mefo.
Yeah.
Looking at the Attorney General has been fingered in this.
The proper context. Now, I read the report from the organization, and they're basically saying that because the bandit or terrorist, Bello Turji, has been allowed to terrorize communities in the northwestern part of the country, and Nnamdi Kanu is being prosecuted by the federal government, that means there's a case of double standard. Now, for me, I think that is, it comes to me as a rather sweeping statement and borders on undue generalization, because the data is not there. The Bello Turji guy who is being referenced, to the best of my knowledge, he's still hiding, he's still running away from the security operatives. Don't forget that this is a man who has killed even security operatives, and he's on the run. So until he's been apprehended by the security agencies and disciplinary actions or prosecution is not being commenced against him in court, that is when the statement can be held to hold water. The fact that a journalist was able to get across to this young man and had an interview with him and then published it is not a proof that he's being engaged with ISWAP terrorists, and even Mohammed Shekau, before we heard he had been killed. There are terrorists who had who engaged with them from the back end. You understand? So under the rules of international law or international humanitarian law, it is accepted. Is an acceptable practice, because so you get information from the standpoint of the non-state actors, so that the state actors with that statement.
Do you think that if the federal government really is serious about getting Turji, that they will get him?
Conventional warfare. It's some of his men or lieutenants have not been killed. There have been reports where military operatives shelled their camps. A lot of them were killed. But this young man, for one reason or other, has continued to elope the security agencies. But it doesn't mean that he's been seen and then been allowed to continue what he's doing.
As put by the Human Rights Association.
Exactly.
But then we also know that this is not a traditional warfare. We're fighting a guerrilla warfare. Why do you think it's taken government so long to deal with this issue?
Warfare is a non-positional warfare, and you rightly described it as a guerrilla warfare. In a guerrilla warfare, it takes quite a lot because the enemies are not well positioned where you can take them out or confront them positionally. Once a war is not positional, it's difficult to really predict the form and the proper response that will give you the desired result. I read the statement issued by Huriwa, signed by the national coordinator, Comrade Emmanuel Onwubiko. I understand his concern that there appears to be reluctance on the part of the federal government to deal with the Turuji factor by taking him out. I really don't see how federal government would want to preserve a Turuji. There is no point, there is no need, and there is no evidence that he has crossed their path properly, and they let him off the hook. I have no idea. I have followed the reports here and there, and what we have seen has not shown any evidence to collaborate the position of Huriwa that the federal government is playing double standards with the case of Turuji. But that said, I am also not quite satisfied with the way the federal government has gone about its overall engagement with the terror groups in the country. If you take, for instance, the way they have responded to the issue of dealing with the killer headsmen, you will see some differential and indifferent treatment in that direction. To date, I am not aware of any serious persecution. I am not aware of any serious attacks. And yet, these people are known to have killed and maimed. And such differential treatment is what Huriwa appears to be, pointing to. But I don't think it applies to the case of Turuji, personally. And I am also not happy with the way they have gone about the prosecution of Nnamdi Kanu. My concern is the way and manner he was brought back to the country. He was extraordinarily renditioned from Kenya to Nigeria. For me, that is a criminal process. And if indeed the federal government wants justice for Nnamdi Kanu, the federal government will naturally go for its extradition, as the American government is doing with the case of Abba-Kyari at the moment. So what stopped the Nigerian government from applying to the Kenyan authorities for Nnamdi Kanu to be properly extradited from Kenya to complete his criminal trial in Nigeria? That wasn't done. He was simply kidnapped, and state kidnap of a citizen from another country.
But the federal government does have an excuse of saying that this man had 2 shorties, if not 3. He skipped, that particular arrangement that he had with these shorties. I remember when the courts kept asking for those shorties to produce Nnamdi Kanu. He was not supposed to in any way leave the country, and he did. I'm not in any way sitting here as a legal person to, justify what the government did. But that's the excuse the government is giving.
He jumped bail, right?
Yes, he did jump bail.
All you're trying to put across is that Nnamdi Kanu jumped bail.
And that's what the excuse the federal government is giving.
But I don't know, as a journalist, I'm aware that you should be aware that Operation Python Dance, invaded his house and people died there. If he was available when the invasion happened, that got a number of people killed within the father's compound, himself could have been a victim. So if the federal government wanted him back, to the court when he violated the conditions of his bail, what to do was very simple. They would have just said, they didn't do that. Instead, they launched military operation, which took some people out in his father's house, where he was. So a tree that would hear that it will be killed and still stays or moved. So, and that's it again. The other point I'm trying to make is that kidnapping him in Kenya, it cannot be justified, even if he jumped bail. If he jumped bail and you tracked him down to Kenya, what you would do as a sovereign state is to apply for his extradition. There is no rule that says that because he jumped bail, he could be kidnapped. You don't do that. Nations don't go into such actions. It's roguery. It's not done. Nigeria is a big country and should live by example. Okay. His extraordinary rendition from Kenya back to Nigeria to stand trial, for me, is a travesty of justice and does not in any way really show that Kanu will get a fair trial in the end, as far as I am concerned, because the desperation is too much. I believe he should have been extradited. I don't believe he will get trial in the end.
All right, let me come back to you, Raymond. He's making an interesting case, and this is some of the issues that most of these journalists and other people who are critics of the government make. They point to what happened to the Yoruba non-state actor Igboho, what happened in his residence, and of course what happened with the Operation Python dance, and how the federal government went about it. Now, let's look at it. These two men who have been called enemy of the state, as opposed to those who are killing in the northwest, in the northeast, those who are still killing all the way down south into the middle belt, they have not necessarily shed blood, nor have they taken up arms to kill Nigerians. So what is exactly the yardstick that government is using to term these people as terrorists? For Sunday Igboho, he was calling on a protest and asking for a secession. And by any rule, I mean, according to the human rights of every person across nations, you have a right to ask for, independence. It's an ask. It's not necessarily... Maybe government was afraid that it was a movement, but I'm looking at all of these men. Let's place all of them on the table, side by side with the people that we call terrorists, the people who are indeed terrorists and that are terrorizing us as we speak. Are they getting a fair trial?
Okay, well, thank you very much. That's quite a loaded one. Now, what constitutes terrorism under the Terrorism Prevention Act 2015 is wide in terms of its construction. So, whereas the terrorists, so-called, as we like to, like the Boko Haram members, the bandits, these are people who have clearly taken up arms against the state. So for them, it is not difficult to say that they are actual terrorists. But in the case of the Boko Haram guys, they have actually declared a war against the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So they are terrorists. So it is easy to disentangle their own case. Now, in the case of Sunday Igboho and Nnamdi Kanu, for Sunday Igboho, his campaign started off as an ethnic nationalism campaign, calling for a declaration of a Yoruba nation. Now, Nigeria is a sovereign state, and the Constitution says that Nigeria is one indivisible and indissoluble entity under God. Now, the very moment any group, under whatever guise within a sovereign state, begins to take part in activities that appears to or that has potential of challenging the territorial or the sovereignty of the state, at that point, they constitute a threat to the continuous existence of Nigeria as one indivisible and indissoluble nation. So, even if they have not taken up arms and perhaps burning governmental institutions or killing members of the public, it puts that intent puts them within the realm of a threat to the state. And to that extent, government has a high responsibility to protect the state and other members of the society. So quickly, as much as
we don't have time, let me quickly tell you why I'm asking this.
Yeah, and heroes, because when you go to the situation, complicated.
Become bad. Well, unfortunately, our time is up. I want to say thank you. Raymond Kanube is a legal practitioner, and Dr. Law Mefo is a public. I am Mary Anna.
They have to come back and convention again.
First of all, we have to know that the end justifies means, and a house that is united can withstand any form of opposition that it faces. So I think the best thing for them is for them to put your house in order first. Let everybody have a common goal. Let everybody have a common interest. Then you can come out and now want to do whatever you want to do. Because from there on, maybe things will now work out fine.
A broken road does not understand Igbo. It will not maim the Fulani and let the rest of us go. The accident it will cause will take our lives. For when a vehicle somersaults, it breaks all bones.
So, you can speak Nupe till morning comes. It will not build libraries in our public schools. And when a woman, a young woman, lies dying in childbirth, your fluency in Ijaw, it will not save her life.
For Christian or Muslim, it makes no difference. When you're being driven around in an ambulance from hospital to hospital in search of oxygen, northerner or southerner, you'll just die suffocating.
You will die from causes easily preventable, like no fuel for the police to respond to your distress call. No light, no water, no nurses, no jobs. Nothing kills